Have you ever noticed how loneliness shows up differently as we move through life? Maybe in your 20s it hit you at 4 a.m. when you realized that your party crowd wasn't really there for you. Or maybe it's hitting you now in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and you're just staring at your phone wondering when making friends got so damn complicated. I have lived both sides of this coin. In my 20s, I was that girl who knew everyone at the club, surrounded by people, but somehow still alone. And these days, I'm usually waking up around the time my former self was just leaving the party. Well, the loneliness feels different now. It's less acute maybe, but deeper somehow. Here's what nobody tells you about growing up. Connections get trickier. Maybe you're married with kids and your idea of a social life is trading war stories with other parents at pickup. Or you're single, watching your friends disappear into their domestic lives while you're still trying to figure out where to meet people who aren't swiping right. Or maybe you have that high-powered career that you worked so hard for, but somewhere between the promotion and the corner office, your friendships just started to feel like another thing on your to-do list. Well, the science behind this is fascinating. Research shows that our social connections peak in our mid-20s, and then they start declining steadily. So by our mid-30s, a lot of us have less than half of the social connections we had a decade earlier. But here's the thing. Our need for genuine connection doesn't decrease. If anything, it gets stronger. I remember looking at my calendar one day and realizing that I hadn't had a real, soul-nourishing conversation with a friend in months. Sure, I had plenty of surface-level check-ins, mainly via text, a quick coffee date once that I squeezed in between meetings, and tons of text threads that never really turned into actual plans. But all of those deeper connections, the ones where you show up exactly as you are, mess and all, those had somehow slipped through the cracks of my carefully scheduled life. And let's be honest, social media makes this whole thing even more confusing. We're constantly watching highlight reels of other people's connections, the birthday brunches, the girls' trips, the cozy dinner parties, while we're sitting alone on our couch, double tapping our way through another lonely evening. So we end up mistaking likes for love, comments for conversation, and then we wonder why we feel so empty. Well, this isn't just about having more friends or being more social. It's about understanding how to create and maintain genuine connections in a world that just seems increasingly designed to keep us apart. So whether you're dealing with party friend hangovers or playground parent small talk, the question remains the same. How do we build relationships that actually fill us up? Well, today our guest is Sa DeSimone, a spiritual teacher who understands the evolution of connection. After his own journey from surface-level relationships to creating deep, meaningful bonds at every stage of life, he now guides other people through the complex landscape of modern connection. So in this episode, you will learn how to build authentic relationships that fit your current life stage. No time machine required. The difference between being connected and feeling connected, because they're not the same. And practical ways to deepen relationships and create new ones, no matter how busy or complicated your life is. I was just talking to a friend who's been trying to hire someone for 3 months. 3 months! She's been posting on random job boards, scrolling through resumes that make no sense, getting ghosted by candidates. It's a mess. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the very top of the page for your relevant candidates so that you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it just makes hiring so fast because you're not wasting time on platforms where nobody's actually looking. Your job gets in front of real candidates who are actively searching. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Let me ask you something. How much time did you spend last week thinking about what to eat? Planning meals, making grocery lists, wandering around the store like a lost tourist. I used to waste entire Sunday afternoons on this, and it was exhausting. Then I found Hungry Root. Hungry Root fills your cart with personalized picks and plans your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. They have over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, and most are ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm actually headed to Michigan this week, and I had my Hungry Root order delivered there. So I already know that I have meals ready and plenty of snacks for the kids without scrambling to find a grocery store. It's just handled. And what I love most is their smart cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements just for me. So no more buying spinach that rots in my fridge. They screen out over 200 additives and only source high quality ingredients. The time I've gotten back has just been life-changing. So take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE.
In the time it takes you to actually board a flight from Group 8,
Now boarding Premier Altitude Elite Club members.
you could have bought a Hyundai on Amazon. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details. Limited availability, pickup through participating Hyundai dealer in select markets.
So I want us all to practice hearing hard things, practice hearing that we make mistakes, practice listening to our shadows being called forth to be integrated right there and there, and not internalizing, not going off to talk to our therapist for the next 3 weeks about that thing. And maybe if that's what you need, then yeah, blessed be, do it. But understand that when a feeling visits your body and it's a big feeling, oftentimes it has nothing to do with what's going on in the present moment. It's hysterical. It's historical. So my big reaction to a small incident the night before was a way for me to be like, oh, wow, I get to release some more of this anger and this fear.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So I've been diving into your book. It's excellent. And I'm curious, what led you to spending so much time and energy understanding all of the intricacies on how we relate to one another?
I mean, thank you for opening with that, but it was like the most obvious thing for me that was at the moment. And a couple of things came up. I saw through unconscious market research, how many people comment on my social media accounts on Instagram saying, I wish I had a friend like you. I wish I had a friend like, can you be my friend? And I was just like, whoa, this is like, it's so often that this happens that I was like, okay, cool. Like there's something really important here that I'm not, that I haven't addressed, like why are people wanting to be my friend? There's nothing special. Maybe there is some sort of like charisma but it's only because I'm living an authentic life, because I'm like unabashed myself. I really do not care. And so that perspective was what and it's not that I don't care. I do care so deeply about helping other people, but I don't care what people think of me, how I look. And, it's just, I think we spend so much of our times trapped in thinking about what other people are thinking about us that robs us from being in the present moment, robs us from reaching out, robs us from creating art, from exposing ourselves, from being vulnerable, from essentially living an authentic life. So that was like the basic thing. I was like, oh, there's a market for this. Clearly people want it. So, and I talked to my agent and she's like, oh my God, it's a great idea. Because a lot of the books about friendship are very heady, are very academic. And what if we bring this to another level through your sassy voice? It could be an interesting thing to bring to the market. So I was like, okay, cool. So I began writing. And one thing that I was able to really face through my own process of writing the book was that I wasn't always this charismatic, magnetic person who has like a lot of friends in a variety of different circles, friends who I water certain things for them, is who water certain things for me, who nourish certain parts of myself, and who I do the same for them. I didn't have this. I wasn't the person that people called when they're going through a hard time. I wasn't the person that people called when they were celebrating a job promotion or their podcast reaching a new level or getting a book deal or whatever, or going on a date. I wasn't someone that people called to say, I'm going on a date. Oh my God. It wasn't that. I was the person that people called to go out and get drunk and high and find God on the dance floor. There's something beautiful about that too. But I really realized that through my spiritual journey, which has been 10 years now, through the Buddhist path, I really like redesigned my inner world in a way that I had enough space and presence to create this environment of warmth for people to want to share their grief with me, to want to share their joys with me. And then I was like, oh my God, like I literally can't keep up with the amount of text messages I have. It was like incredible. And then I started to realize like, okay, cool. What do I do with all of this connection that I'm being, I don't want to use the word bombarded because it feels aggressive and it doesn't feel sweet and so deeply grateful that I am that I have that. But I felt overwhelmed by the amount of connection that I was receiving. And then I started to look at the Dunbar research, which I quote in the book, about the kinds of friendships that we have and the amount of people that we can cognitively have in our lives and who should be closer, who should be a little further, who should be even further out. We can dive into this a little later. And so that was like another thing that I was like, oh, interesting. And then what became really telling for me, Melissa, was when my mother died, I had friends flying from across the world to be with me. I had friends flying across the country. I had friends canceling their plans to just sit with me and not try to repair, resolve, heal, nothing. They just sat quietly next to me, made chicken soup, cleaned my bathroom, folded the laundry, did the dishes, brought the kombucha, brought the chocolate, bought the cigarettes, whatever it was necessary in that moment to meet the moment for what it was, not for what they wanted to be because they were uncomfortable. I think that's a big piece of it. And then, so that's like on the like relationality aspect. And then as I started to like dive in and talk to these experts, scientists, and all kinds of academic powerhouses, from like Dr. Rachel Wuzerman to Dr. Lisa Miller and all these amazing people, what I realized was that friendship is a vital need. It's a biological, psychological, and spiritual need. It's the same that we have for the need for water, the need for rest, the need for food. It's just we are wired through the distractive tendencies of modernity and capitalistic culture of produce, to run away from our bodies and not feel that need as a vital nutrient for our wellness, And then the last piece I'm going to say is, so we have that, and then now taking sort of to the esoteric realm, to the spiritual realm, there's a lot of talk in the vernacular that like you can only become fully healed or enlightened or liberated by yourself, that this work is a solo trip, that you have to, sit by yourself, do the work on your own, cancel people, give people put up these solid boundaries, protect your peace. A lot of the vernacular is around protect your peace. But what I have realized through my own personal liberation process, and also what I've realized through studying with these great teachers, is that liberation in itself is a relational experience, that you can't become utterly healed or free or experience these samadhi-like states individually, that it just doesn't happen from your side independently of everyone else and everything else, because we are not that. It goes against the reality that we are interdependent, that we are a plural, that we are a relationship, And so I really make the point for people to realize that in order for you to develop your peace, yes, dip into your peace by yourself. Dip into your peace in the silence of your home. bask in it, luxuriate in it. And then does it translate to the elevator when you are with strangers? Does it translate to the coffee shop? Does it translate to the supermarket? Does it translate to your coworkers? Does it translate to your mother-in-law? Does it translate to your kids? So that's the piece that a lot of it wasn't translating for people, that it was very like self-intoxicating. So choosing to protect your peace keeps you in a myopic view that what you're doing by keeping yourself sheltered away from people, place, and experiences is the way for you to sustain that peace. But it's the opposite of what spiritual scriptures talk about. So I'll leave it there. This was like a long answer because it was such a potent question that you opened. So thanks for that question.
So much in that. And I love what you said about that because, yeah, how are you really evolving or developing resilience if you're just removing every trigger from your life? The point should be in how you relate to those triggers. Can you still have that peace when somebody from the opposite political party is holding a sign in your face and telling you you're wrong? And then who are you? How are you at Thanksgiving dinner when your mom says that thing she says to you 1,000 times? Still working on that one for me. But it's just so true because I think that's a step in spirituality. At least it was for me, where I remember being like, oh, I got to cut people out. And some of those relationships were necessary to cut out for me, especially at that time, because I was still building up that strength. But now it takes a lot for me to really get to the point of cutting out. Like, I have to know that they are truly toxic for me, but not, I trust my resilience so often that if somebody's flailing, I see it more as an opportunity to help or as their wounds being exposed rather than anything to do with me. And I don't think I was there 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
I mean, you named it. This is exactly it. There was a season in my journey too, when I had first gone to India, that I had to take a step back from family dynamics, that I had to take a step back from the check-ins and the updates for me to be able to like develop some ground and to use your language to develop resiliency to then pick myself back up. And I love what you said, that when they are in this chaotic, toxic behavior, when they're activated in that, it's actually a call for help. It's actually that their wounds are activated. Like 9 times out of 10 has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with their pain. And when people can take responsibility for the chaos that they're creating in other people's lives because they're activated in their wound, this is the gig. So if someone even has that awareness to say, wow, I act in really toxic ways when I am activated in these ways, and unfortunately, you are part of the chaos trail that I create, and I'm sorry about that. This is profound. I think a lot of the times people don't want to be exposed. They don't want to be vulnerable enough to say the hard thing, to let people into how wounded they are, to how hurt they are, and how they haven't processed their mother's death, and how they haven't processed their divorce, and how they haven't dealt with their eating disorder and their addictive tendencies, and how you just showing up in your body in a relaxed state is the most triggering thing for them, because they're so far away from their body that seeing you being in your body and relaxed in your body, accessing the deep breath, accessing a wider perspective, accessing the heart-centered approach to living, it is the utmost triggering experience for someone who is on the opposite end of it. They're like, I hate you for that. And I want you to, that sort of proximity, law of proximity with feelings, I want you to feel as unwell as I do. So I'm going to project, I'm going to inflict, I'm going to harm. But there is a place in the non-dual, beyond good or bad, in the beyond psychosomatic structures. I mean, actually within somatics, when we bridge somatics into spirituality, we really realize that there is no happy or sad feeling. It's just how we relate to it. So when we are seeing someone in that active, toxic place, for a while, you do need to protect yourself. So creating boundaries. But then there has to be that point of like testing your material. Can I see this as an outburst of their own unprocessed pain? Can I see this from a lens of compassion? That's a human being who needs help, not pity, but from someone who actually needs help. And sometimes us helping them is not doing anything at all and allowing them to go through that chaos. Because sometimes compassion does look like stepping away and not robbing them of the opportunity of going through their painful process. So they actually learn something that sticks. They learn something somatically, viscerally, that lives in their body that they know they won't go back to doing. And sometimes it does show up as you saying, hey, I bought like 3 therapy sessions for you with this amazing therapist, or I'm going on this retreat. Do you want to come with me? Or sending someone a gift card to a meditation center. I don't know. There's a million ways that we can care for people. And we often think that the way to care for them has to be exactly like what worked for us, or it has to be exactly what we think that they need, which oftentimes it's not.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys, workplace stress is killing us. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal. So if you're feeling it, you are not alone. I used to think I could just push through everything, work harder, sleep less, pretend I had it all figured out. But that approach nearly broke me. I am all about following your joy. If that voice in your head is telling you to make a change, listen to it. Maybe you are ready to quit your job. Maybe you do need to flip your whole life upside down. But either way, you need support and tools to navigate it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to manage anxiety before it spirals, how to make big moves from a place of strength instead of desperation. And BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists and has helped 5 million people worldwide. And you can talk to someone from your couch. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling. Therapy gives you the clarity on whether that voice telling you to make a change is your intuition or just the Sunday scaries. But either way, you deserve support. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. It reminds me of something you said earlier around people meeting you where what you needed. Like maybe that was buying the cigarettes. Somebody could have been sitting there being like, he doesn't need to smoke right now. You know what I mean? That's been a big journey for me, is especially as someone who related to just being empathic and really feeling other people's discomfort. For such a long time, I couldn't discern what was mine and what was theirs. And so all of my instincts were making myself feel better. I need to make this go away so that I'm not uncomfortable with not being able to solve your problem, or I'm not uncomfortable with things not being fun right now, or whatever it was. And that takes a lot, because sometimes it's like, okay, let me put aside what I would need at this moment. And this really requires me to know this person, to know what helps them. And we're losing a lot of this skill because I think it's because of social media. So we're in this new connection point, but it's like social media is like the glass of wine of connection. Sure, if you're feeling emotional or you have a stressful day, you can have a glass of wine and forget about it, but it's not actually getting to the root of anything. And the same thing with social media. We're like, actually, let me just join a new Facebook group of people who all think like me. Let me just block this person. Let me not feel this one-on-one connection with this person because it's through a screen. And so we're amplifying our egos in a sense versus actually connecting with each other one-on-one. And so I think many of us, without that awareness, are losing that ability to really feel and sense what the other person actually needs.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. I'm so glad you brought this in, because I feel like I've built this beautiful career because of social media and content going viral, and people from all over the world benefiting in, and having strangers at the grocery store, at the gas station say, oh my God, your work really changed my life. Thank you so much. So from that perspective, I'm so grateful that we have that. And when it really comes down to it, social media is atrophying our muscle for connection. Social media is severing our ability to connect with people. We don't know how to do human. We don't know how to do presence, to be in our bodies, to feel our feelings. We are so habituated to distract. And then my friend Shannon Algio, an incredible therapist, says with the swipe up, with the swipe left culture, swipe left if you don't like them, swipe right if you do. Like we're undermining the toxicity that has in our psyche, in our bodies, in our souls of like swiping people left. Like, and then we do this in our lives. No wonder why we are in a culture where 1 out of 4 Americans have no one to talk to, that suicide rates are higher than ever, that like 60% of the elderly population who enters a hospital has no social support. I like to say it's closer to 80% from having been, training in how to care for the sick and dying here at a hospital in Los Angeles. It's much higher than 60%. We're close to 80%. Like literally, it's absurd how far removed we are from connection. And it's interesting for them, the elderly population who are entered the hospital now and not having connection, I think their problems are different than ours. But for us, right, the listeners to the show, perhaps right now, maybe late 20s to maybe your early 40s, I think we are in this window of opportunity to really check in with our relationship with social media and technology, because you're right, it is connecting us and it is helping us see atrocities across the world, and it is helping us to get to know an artist in Berlin and a dancer in Singapore. Like, yeah, cool. I love that. That's amazing. And music coming from Morocco and Brazilian dances on the street and food from different parts of, like, from that, it's wonderful, right? Because in the past it would be a luxury for only the wealthy who had access to travel, or people who had access to books that can talk about it. So from that perspective, it's wonderful. But to me, with a somatic lens, it is insane how far away from being in our bodies we are. We're living in the past, we're living in the future, we're not here and now. And anytime we get the somatic pull, that feeling that visits our body for, I need a friend, we misinterpret it. I'm hungry. I need a glass of wine. I need a cigarette. I need to masturbate. I need to watch TV. I need to go on social media. I need to do this. I need to do that. And it's this, the body's just saying, hey, I need the warmth of another body. I need to come back into my body. I need co-regulation. I need support coming back into my body. And that's the need for connection, And social media has created such a quick fix for when the need for connection strikes, that it robs people of being like, oh, this feeling is not hunger. This feeling is connection. It's a visceral, biological, nutritional deficiency that I'm lacking in right now that I need to act on. And I remind people all the time, saying the words, I need a friend, I need connection. I need support. People in the vernacular of modernity right now, because of capitalistic culture of you can do it, you got to do it on your own, produce, self-made billionaires, self-made this, like all this language in the vernacular is so toxic and so untrue that it leaves us believing that we are meant to do the ups and downs of life alone. We're not. It's the opposite. We are tribal people. We belong in community. You can look at it from a purely archaeological and physiological perspective, but like I said, from a spiritual and wellness perspective, the way that we experience peace, it's multiplied when it's collective. The way that we experience joy is multiplied when it's collective. The way we experience sorrows and grief and terror and confusion when it's collective, it lessens the burn. People are shouldering part of your pain with you, for you. These are not esoteric woo-woo things. This is just literally, think about what happens when we get hurt and there's someone that we can call someone to share the burden right there and there. And I think there's a big trauma therapist who says the problem with trauma is not even the event. It's not having an empathetic presence with you right after the event. And that's what creates the loop. That's what creates the disorders. That's what creates the addiction. That's what creates all the harms and perpetuates pain in the world. And I find that fascinating, right? Because it's, if you really think about it, when you get the good news and you're sitting on your couch and you're just like, oh, I got the job, or I'm going to fly whatever business class to this thing because they gave me this bonus, whatever. Maybe it may be silly like that, or it may be like really meaningful and deep, or maybe someone that you really like texts you back, maybe that. And when you share with someone else, the feeling doesn't just come and go, fleeting, passing, and then you get to create luxuriate in it because of the stories you tell yourself. There is a sense of like an overflow of joy. having the warmth of someone else mirroring back to you, that they're happy for you, that they're happy with you. It's an ecstatic experience. It's so different than when you go through the ups and downs alone. And I think social media is perpetuating that. It's literally robbing us of how to engage, how to say, I like your shoes. What's your name? Oh, cool. That was a really beautiful yoga practice. Wow, you're such a great dancer, how did you get to do this thing, without having it always be transactional, without always be like, how can this person be an up for me? How can this person be a way for me to climb the social ladder? But to really just be a human connection, a nourishing of hearts that are so required for the wellness of our hearts, for the wellness of our soul, for the wellness of the world,
Yeah, social media, we need to bucket it into a different category, like entertainment or research, or like bucket it into the same thing that you would The Sims if you play something like that, because it's all these fake versions of it, or very surface level versions of connection. But the problem is our minds hook onto it. And it's like, well, I've gotten connection. I spent 24 hours on social media today, And so we think that we do. And we're like, it can't be that neat. I just chatted with this person this long via Facebook Messenger or whatever it is. Or I've commented on 12 people's posts today. So we got to keep it in a different bucket and really make sure we're getting that one-on-one connection, because I've learned through other interviews that our cells physically change just by being in the presence of another person. There's so much more integration through one-on-one connection. Even a phone call, when we hear somebody's voice, you get another layer of empathy. So there's levels. And so I'm curious though, your book talks about the art of relating. How is this different from how most people think about relationships?
Really good question. Then there's many layers to this question that I'm going to try to keep it brief. The way that I want people to relate, the way that I hope that people relate to each other is from what Dr. Lisa Miller says, like souls on earth. And what does that mean? It's this unbiased, unfiltered, free of prejudice approach to each other, and not entering the room with the superiority or inferiority complex. I like you, I don't like you. You look good, you don't look good. So freeing ourselves from all these biases and all these separatory narratives. What would happen when we can enter a room and just see everybody as Ram Dass said this quote, as God in drag? What would happen if we could see everyone as God in drag, like everyone playing a role, as showing up as an expression of God and showing up as support system for you. Like the narratives that we have about feeling unsafe with people, some of it's true, but some of it is really created by our unhealed parts, So the relationship piece, the art of relating from the heart, it's arriving at a place and try this. Can you just do this for one afternoon where you go to the grocery store and not with your headphones, not listening to a podcast, not listening to music, literally, and you just walk through the grocery store and you see everyone as God in drag. You see everyone as beings participating on your liberation, conspiring in your favor, and you're participating in their liberation, that you guys are all in this non-verbal, beautiful flow of helping each other in ways that the eyes in our face can't even see, but our nervous system knows, our heart knows, our souls know that there's something much deeper taking place here. Test it. Start there to just see what happens. And that practice will help you to see your husband's or partner's mistake in a whole new way. It will help you to see your kids' tantrum in a whole new way. It will help you to see everyone and everything in a whole new way. It's just the unsocializing ourselves from these narratives of separation. It's really important. And the truth is, it really starts with you learning to feel your feelings, learning to be in your body, learning to feel what you feel when you feel. I feel like when I say this to people, it feels like a foreign language to them. They don't know how to name what they feel when they feel. They don't know how to speak about their feelings in a neutral way. They don't know how to say, this feels warm, this feels prickly, this feels heavy, this feels like it's moving, this feels like it's this or that. Like there's no neutrality to the felt sense. So I do bring in a lot of somatic Buddhist somatic understanding into the book, because it's what freed me to be able to relate to people without feeling the need to impose or pull back or control, to really like navigate conflict in another way, because I am realizing that no one can put a feeling inside of me. And yes, through empathy we can feel with each other, but the residue of an empathetic resonance is yours. Like if someone else's chaos makes you feel chaotic because of this empathetic resonance, and it leaves you feeling chaotic after they've left your presence, it's your chaos. That's your responsibility to deal with. And then it's about you bridging that to a compassionate state. What do I need to come back into my body? What do I need to let go of these feelings? What do I need to participate in helping myself? So I want to name that relating from the heart requires you to, step one, learn to feel your feelings. Learn to feel your feelings in a neutral way, that this is not good or bad or happy or sad. They're just passing sensations. And then this is kind of like the more harder piece to it, is understanding that like feelings not necessarily are messengers, especially for our minds that are so polluted with so much someone else's information, somebody else's pain, somebody else's joy, somebody else's success. We're so polluted with the world that oftentimes our narratives that we have around how we feel are based on how someone else's thoughts about that kind of state. So it's really hard for us to be able to feel that this feeling is a messenger to act in this way and do something in that way. So step one to relating from the heart. And I know this is hard to hear, but if you really realize that perhaps if you're listening to every feeling as a messenger, it's gotten you to a place where you aren't so happy, then maybe what I'm saying right now could hold some truth for you. To really start to like feel feelings without stories, like feel them without thinking them, feel them as passing sensations, even the happiness, even the pleasant feelings, even the inspiration, the creativity, the joy, even the sense of forgiveness and release, like feel it all without stories. Just feel them for what they are, a pleasant passing experience, because that will help you to be able to connect with other people in a whole other way. That when you're feeling something, you're not contracting. You can actually just like, oh, I feel unpleasant right now. This doesn't mean that this person is bad. This doesn't mean that our connection is bad. This doesn't mean that this will be the trajectory of our connection, because there's a moment of boredom, that there's a moment of contraction. You know, does that make sense? I think it's sometimes people are like, what does that mean to feel my feelings and not think them?
No, 100%. I'm all about seeing if you can experience the moment without the meaning that your mind wants to give it, because the meaning is always driven by the ego. And so what's underneath? And that, I love that, not seeing them as messengers, because it reminds me of, everyone has that friend that complains about everything. And I feel like that's our ego layer personified, where it's like, okay, yeah, so your boss has an issue on the person that sits next to you, and your child and your mom and whatever. But clearly, just by listening to you, I guarantee not every single person that you've ever come in contact with is the problem. What's the common denominator? And we can do that same thing with ourselves. And our reactions are so often habitual. It's how we've allowed ourselves or our nervous systems to run rampant throughout our lives. So we're going to be triggered by that exact same thing. And that's why so many, there's the thing called the mother wound. So many mothers and daughters have these ongoing issues because they've been with each other forever. They're both these females with these fiery personalities. And it's like, I know there's certain things that my mom can say, and if somebody was watching on the outside, I'm getting fired up based on 3 words she just said, because it's something that's from our past and our past and our past over and over again, versus just that moment. And we're always carrying our pasts into the present moment and seeing them through these colored glasses. So tuning into our bodies is taking the glasses off for a second and actually just feeling that. And instead of immediately taking action, what if you can just integrate that moment? What if you can trust your body to release that and let the mood pass in 30 to 90 seconds instead of creating that story around it to keep it going into depression, into mania, into whatever ongoing disposition that we're creating for ourselves, which then ends up making up our entire personalities. So I think I was following you.
Oh my God, you nailed it so well. I'm like, damn, honey, this is not the first time you're hearing these words. It's not the first time you've done that work. It sounds like literally you've embodied this wisdom. Fuck yeah, excuse my language, but wow. It's not often that we hear the big AA mantra explored so beautifully like you did, Melissa. You know, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Um, you did it so beautifully without even saying it, that like so often our explosive reactions to small things in life, we are so driven to find someone to place blame on. We're so driven to stay in a victim story. And it's true, sometimes there is someone to blame. And it's true, sometimes we are the victim. All of us perhaps listening have been, and I think every human will at some point be the victim of something awful. And then it's a matter of like, what do we do with it? You know, what do we do? How are we willing to move forward? And two things are coming to mind. One, that I didn't say earlier, but if you really think about all the wounds we have, all that sort of haunts us, or all the self-harm that we have active in our own lives, all the self-destructive tendencies we have, they're all byproducts of something that happened relationally. You know, it's all something that you didn't start harming yourself by yourself. It was because of that bully. It was because of mommy said this or daddy did that or the ex-boyfriend or this. Like we don't start self-destructive behaviors, even self-destructive thinking by ourselves. It doesn't originate independent of everyone else and everything else. It's all relational. So understanding that it happens in relationship, the wound, and it can only be healed in a context of relationship. So it goes back to what we started addressing earlier on. But I want to name, the whisper was telling me to say this, so I'm saying it. But one thing that I want to name out if it's hysterical, it's historical. Some things, and now this is the Buddhist in me, so hold, but there's also all the research about transgenerational trauma, how trauma lingers through chemistry. So perhaps there's a lot of weaving of esoteric wisdom with science that we can all be like, okay, cool. Maybe it's not about finding the first time you're angry. Maybe it's not about finding the first time you're rejected. Maybe it's not about finding why I feel the way I feel. Maybe it's enough to just feel what you feel in the here and now and know that it doesn't match the context of reality, and that's okay. And stop looking for it to match the context of reality, because your mind is so profound, so creative that it will find ways to muster up fake evidence to show you why you should be feeling the way you're feeling. But in reality, the coffee was just warm, not hot enough. And now you're a rage monster because of it. Or your mother didn't get out of the house 5 minutes early like you asked her to, or your partner or your kids. And then all of a sudden you've turned into this like monster-like creature. Through the Buddhist lens, we say there's no reason to look for why I feel the way I feel, but always look for how can I come back into my body? How could I let this go? How could I soften my heart? How could I be an active participant in the present moment? And oftentimes with the why thinking, which is kind of like within the therapeutical model of trying to find why, to find new perspective, and there's room for that. But I find that it can perpetuate stories instead of presence, can perpetuate stories instead of mind-body connection, instead of feeling the feelings in the body. So, through the Buddhist perspective, we say your anger predates you. Your frustration, your despair, your dread predates you. Like it didn't start with you. And it's your job right now, because you are in this body, you are this expression of consciousness in this moment. It's your job to work with it, to let it go, to process it through you. And then there's something beautiful. This is more on the esoteric side, but it's like, what if you're processing the anger that your grandmother didn't get to say no to the abuser? What if you're processing this anger in your body right now is all these women in your lineage who all were hurt by various reasons, and they didn't get to address, but you get to do it. And if you choose to stay in your body when the anger strikes and not act in unconscious ways, what if you're actually doing something that's beyond just you? What if for everyone, addressing oppressed women, because I think it's so much of our pain comes from that. oppressed in our lineage, right? And so this is like so beautiful that we get to like, oh, I get to participate in healing my ancestors. I get to participate in not bringing this forward into the my kids' lives, into my offspring, into the world in general. So oftentimes, how we relate to an experience has very little to do with the experience itself, because we're constantly bringing the past into the present. And unless we have this openness to be able to feel our feelings when we feel them, we're going to continuously be allowing the stores of the past have power over present. So we're never going to be able to see the poetry in the here and now. We're never going to be able to see the opportunities in the here and now. Think about two people walking down the streets. One who's holding on to their anger, who's holding on to their story so tight and trying to find why, and they're in a loop. Why? Who to blame? I'm the victim. Da, da, da. And someone else who's just like, yeah, cool. I allow you to come. I allow you to go. Thanks for visiting. I permit you to pass, right? With that kind of relationship to their feelings. Two people are gonna walk the same street and see things completely different. One person's gonna see beautiful, inspiring, perhaps even empowering experiences in that same street, and that person's gonna be like, "Oh my God, this sucks," So yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because I just relate so much, and a huge part of my understanding of myself was going back to, when did this first happen? And why do I feel this way? Have I always carried this thread of loneliness? Why, and I thought it was helpful. And also I thought that I was able to do it from a higher mindset of like a lot of things went back to my mom because I'm an only child, and it was me and her for a long time until she had my stepdad and then whatever. And so there's these key moments of like, moving around a lot, this thing that she said to me that made me feel less important, this thing, because she was my constant. So of course, a lot of those things were going to be back to her. And I thought that I was able to do it in this mindset of, I'm not blaming you because I still love you. I just want to understand myself. But it became almost impossible for me to untangle. And in moments of emotion, for me not to be like, yeah, but you did this. I wish it could have been like this. And all of these other things when I was in a different and emotional state. Sure, I could do it while I'm writing in my workbook, like in this higher state of mind after a meditation. But when it came to these moments of like actually feeling like I wasn't important to her, all of a sudden it was all of our history or something like that. And it was almost impossible not to blame. And what really helped me work through that was related to something you said earlier of people being mirrors so that you can really get to your highest moment, looking at it as a soul contract and seeing my mom as like, what if we were these little souls sitting there before this lifetime? And she's like, it reminds me of the book, it's called The Little Soul. And it just talks about like, okay, I'll be that person for you. I'll be the villain in this moment so that you can embody forgiveness or love or resilience or whatever that it is. And so looking at it in that way allows me to really see everyone as God in drag. Even the person that was victimized me the most, that actually was the moment that I stepped into my highest self. Like it was the trajectory of that led me to what I'm doing now was because of what I experienced overcoming the worst thing that ever happened to me. And so can I actually just have gratitude for that person? At this point, I can. And the more that I come back to that way of seeing, the easier it becomes doing it in the moment, whereas before I had to be like really outside of it. Now that time frame is getting closer and closer. And it reminds me of something that you say in your book, because so many people believe that good relationships should be effortless, but you think this is harmful. And I think this also goes back to us, 100 years ago, we only had the 30 people around us and in our village and in our family. So, if Uncle John was creepy and weird, you just kind of learn to accept Uncle John. I think this is why my grandma is so good at accepting people as they are. Whereas now we're like, well, I got 1,000 people on my friends list. I don't need you. So we're more quickly swiping left on people that could be a core part of our lives, that could be just trying to reflect back some of our deepest wounds.
Mhm. Hey, I just want to applaud you. You're so wise. You really have done the work in a beautiful way. I do so many of these so often, and it's amazing. And not to create contrast, but I think it's important for your listener and for me too, as someone participating, creating a reality with you in this moment. You've really, I want to lift your work. I want to lift your inner revelation work. It's palpable. Yeah.
You.
Yeah, it's
That means a
palpable.
lot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think the vernacular of friendships should be easy and romantic relationships and relationships in general should be effortless. Literally, it is the opposite of a good relationship because you are in a surface. You're never getting to allow anyone into your inner world, to your secret parts, to how experiences call feelings inside of you. What stories bubble up when these feelings surface? What behaviors want to erupt when these feelings come and these stories populate? What is your inner trajectory as you're navigating through life? It's so beautiful to let people know that when you do this, I feel unsafe. And when I feel unsafe, or I should even take this back, when these experiences happen, because we're trying to address conflict in a neutral way. We're trying to address it in a non-biased way, not centering around me, mine, and I, but centering around the experience itself that is outside of you or me. It's something that happened, although we're participating in it, but that sort of neutrality softens the blow where the person who's participating, who's in conflict with you, who you are in conflict with, can actually hear. Because when we point fingers, it never works ever. If you really notice that, if you say, you do this, when you do this, I feel crazy. You make me crazy. Oh my God. What did I like all that, the blame placing? It literally robs you from the present moment and immediately pushes them out of their body far, far away. They're way back into the past. They're way far into the future. They're not here and now. They can't hear a word you're saying. So, allowing someone into your inner world and realize that conflict is for lovers. I write about this in the book because it really does remind us that conflict isn't inherently a bad thing. Conflict, if you look at it from a lens of non-duality, if you look at it from a lens of neutrality, it does offer the gateway for the deepest points of intimacy. And when you say, when things like this happen, I don't feel safe. When I don't feel safe, I think that you don't love me. I think that I don't belong here. I think that we need to break up. I think that you're disgusted by me. Whatever. Go as far and let people in to your inner secret parts. And then say, when I think these thoughts, I just want to drink myself to sleep. I want to binge eat, or I want to whatever. I want to harm myself. But when we allow the person we're in conflict with into our inner secret parts, your felt sense, your thinking process, the urge to act in unconscious ways, it really creates a bridge. It's literally, I've seen 9 times out of 10, literally it softens in a way that person who has been actively acting in ways that you feel unsafe in, it just changes. Because finally they understand the impact of their actions and inactions. Because sometimes it's how you don't do something, what calls for you, what comes up for you.
And that requires this level of self-awareness. That's what I love about it is just in practicing it, you start to realize, wait, everything I want to say is still blame-based. And so it's only through that, as you put it, staying in the fire in that difficult moment and actually sitting there. A lot of times it takes me a moment where I'll pause and that's when I know that I'm having a conflict in a way that's beneficial or that's healthier for me. If I'm just constantly firing back, then I know I'm in my ego. I know I'm just trying to maintain my current perspective. But when I'm stopping and reflecting and being like, actually, what's under that? Oh, it's safety. Oh, it's not feeling heard or whatever it is, rather than you're doing this, you're doing that. But that takes a moment for me still to get to that place. And it reminds me of something else you talk about that I love. It's just such a good reminder because so often it's like, okay, what is that? And we're like going for every emotional term we've ever heard in our lives. But your book discusses the Buddhist concept of the 3 poisons. Tell us about those. Your book discusses the Buddhist concept of the three poisons. Tell us about those.
Before I tell you about that, can I share a little story?
Of course.
Because I'm saying we're talking about from the perspective of someone created an experience of harm that we are part of. So now I'm hurt because of it. But what about when we are the one who caused the mistake? What about when we are the one who operated in an unconscious way? I'm going to give you an example. I went on a second date with someone yesterday, and he said that on our first date, something I said to him caused him to feel some type of way. And I wasn't in my body enough to notice that he had shut down. And we carried on, fine. But then yesterday at dinner, he brought it up. He was like, "Hey, when this thing happened, I didn't feel good, and I kept, moving through the motions because I felt the need to just keep being cute about it, something like that." And as I'm listening to this, I was like, oh, in my mind, it's a second date. I could have just said, you know what? F you. This is your interpretation. It doesn't matter. Whatever. Da 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 da. You interpreted what I said in a wrong way. Your feelings got hurt because of your unprocessed father wound, mother wound, whatever. We could have gone into the whole psychobabble about why someone acted in whatever. You get my point. But I chose to put my fork down, take a sip of water, trace the feeling in my body that I was feeling, like rejection, hurt, the need to run, the need to close away, the need to say, I don't want to be next to you. You're bad. You're bad. That was something that was coming up. And then as I brought my awareness to my body, it was in my belly. It was this big prickly ball. And I held eye contact with him while bringing awareness into my body. And then just by bringing gentle warmth to that prickly ball that was hot and cold at the same time to my body, that thing started to move and it passed out of my body. So my gaze softened, my shoulders relaxed, my heart was open again. I can finally taste the food, because when we are in that frazzled state, it's all metallic tasting or tastes nothing. And then I was able to respond in a way that was honest, that was aware that I had spoken and acted in a moment of not being in my body, of being unconscious, of being disconnected, and in a self-serving way. And from that point, the dinner was incredible. The connections gotten so deep. One may say, "Oh, second date, a first date, if it's not happy, giggle, playful, fun, or connection, and it's just this beautiful thing, it's not the right person for you." I want to invite you to make mistakes and address the mistakes, address the unfelt feeling, address what comes up for you, sit with it, be in the fire, and then notice what happens. Like, the connection is now 10 times, 10x, because of the fact that we sat through a moment of fiery exploration together. And we both came out learning about each other and learning about how to relate to each other's wounds, because it will continue to happen until we're Buddhas. It will continue to happen. So I just wanted to bring that into the mix, because it's so hard to hear when we make mistakes, someone calling us in, not calling us out, calling us back into our bodies. It's really hard. We shut down. In the vernacular of psychospiritual somatic, it's so much about what people did to us, and so little about what we done to other people, how we hurt, how we act in unconscious, harmful, unskillful, small or big ways. But if we can learn to be with it, the person, maybe they just need you to acknowledge how they feel, and acknowledge that the experience isn't something that's beneficial for anybody, that you were in an unconscious place. Does that make sense?
Totally. I'm actually flashing back to multiple times over the years. Especially, I think it's sometimes it's more difficult in a way now, because
Mhm.
I've done so much work that I hope that I get to a point where I'm not like not necessarily offending people because I know just by nature you offend, but not acting unconsciously to hurt somebody in a different way. Something happened to me, or not to me. I did something to somebody last year. We were at this
Yeah.
party and it was like this gift exchange thing and there was notebooks. That was one of the gifts. And this joke came up. This one girl goes, I have the worst handwriting, blah, blah, blah. Oh, because we're trying to pick who saw the names. It's like, well, whose name is this? She's like, sorry, my handwriting's so bad. So it became this ongoing joke throughout the night. And then she got the notebook and she's like, oh, I got the notebook. And I'm the one who can't write or something like that. And I like added onto the joke. And I was like, well, you can practice your letters. A, B. And I just thought I was like adding to the joke. And she was like, shots fired, and got very offended. And I felt so bad because from my past, my family's jokesters, and it's just one of the things in our family. It
Mine too.
doesn't matter who the butt of the joke is. Like if it's that somebody's, the joke comes before the person at any time in our family. So it took me until my like late 20s to really understand that. I remember going to college and being like, why is everyone so thin skinned? Like, I don't understand. It's the joke, you know? And so I've really consciously worked myself out of that. And so when this happened, I immediately like went and apologized. I actually still don't think things are totally clear. And I just saw her at a party the other day and I came home to my husband. I was like, I just regret that so much. Like, it feels like such a wound to me because I really want to be a person that moves out of that. And in that moment, it was just the joke. And so I can feel myself constantly justifying, well, it wasn't that bad. Everyone was making jokes. I don't get it, you know, instead of just being like, okay, I need to let this go and just be as good of a friend as I can from here on out. But it's harder now than it was 15 years ago when I just pass it off and be like, whatever, like it was just a joke. I don't, you know, and I could just kind of ignore it and them be the problem versus me. And now I internalize it quite deeply.
hmm And that's also so beautiful about I think a reflection of you, Melissa, and your work and your sensibility and your empathy and your compassion, you know. And I want to just like emphasize a little bit of like you having self-awareness that the joke didn't land and how it was hurtful for somebody, um, and to still with outside of the context of what you shared, but to really realize in the context of what I was saying, like I was caught off guard that I had made a mistake. You know, I was literally shocked. Like we had just arrived at dinner. We're talking about sweet things and it's lovely and sweet. And then this popped up and I was like, ooh, I don't know. And the initial thoughts is like, oh, I don't like you anymore. Bye. I need to leave. I'm going to just do an exit. And to notice that when we get called in, when we have someone be like, hey, what you did there wasn't cool. It didn't work. Remember, there is a way of addressing it without blame, but sometimes because the vernacular is so socialized to place blame, and in this context, I was the one who acted unconsciously, and the languaging there was soft too. There was some gentleness to it, so it wasn't me on blast. It was like I didn't say anything in the moment, so I'm taking my part in it. So it softened, right? Instead of me being the sole proprietor of the blame, it was shared. But it was hard to hear. So I want us all to practice hearing hard things, practice hearing that we make mistakes, practice listening to our shadows being called forth to be integrated right there and there, and not internalizing, not going off to talk to our therapist for the next 3 weeks about that thing. And maybe if that's what you need, then yeah, blessed be, do it. But understand that when a feeling visits your body and it's a big feeling, oftentimes it has nothing to do with what's going on in the present moment. It's hysterical. It's historical. So my big reaction to a small incident the night before was a way for me to be like, oh, wow, I get to release some more of this anger and this fear and this need to run from my body. I get to stop running from difficult conversations. I get to do this for everyone who's come before me. I get to do this for everyone who's come after me. I get to stay here at dinner. I get to take a deep breath and track the sensations in my body as they surface. I get to let go. That is so profound. And it's interesting. You and I can talk about this because we both practice feeling our feelings when they surface. But for the people who are listening, it sounds poetic and cute. But it will never land, I want to be really honest, until you actually stop and you do it in the moment. That you don't say, "Oh, I'm gonna feel this a little later," or like you run away. I've noticed this in the hospital when I was doing my clinical training. A patient would have died in the ICU, and I've just offered a prayer or a ritual or whatever it may be to the patients, over the patient's body, with the patient's family. And then part of the chaplain work is to check in with the staff. And I'm like, "How are you feeling? That patient's been here for a while, like you develop a connection with them." "I'm fine. I'm gonna go check on you know, 32, 41, whatever maybe." And that is how we approach our lives. That's like a small example that shows how we are habituated to not feel what we feel when we feel, that we think that we can, we don't have like somatic checkpoints in our life. We don't have these reminders to pause and process the day and let go of what happened as it happens. We have a narrative and we're socialized to hold on, to allow our painful stories to become who we are. And it really robs us of connecting, robs us of reaching out. It robs us of essentially the most important thing I want people to understand. It robs us of the opportunity to connect deeper. And the point where I made earlier, that you will have people flying across the world to be with you when your mother dies, or when you have to go to chemotherapy, or when you have surgery and you're like, "Oh, I have no one to drive me to chemotherapy, no one to drive me to surgery. I have no one to come clean my house. I have no one who can babysit my kids because me and my husband haven't had a date night in 3 months. We've lost complete touch of each other. I haven't felt his affection because kids are in the way. I don't have anyone to babysit." Like, all these layers are on the way because from what I've understood, our inability to feel what we feel when we feel, and the stories that populate because of that process that doesn't happen, that's happening, but we hold ourselves back from experiencing. And then we get rigid. The stories solidify, the feelings make home in our bodies. And then we are walking around with closed fists, with our gaze to the floor, with our shoulders to our ears, with our stomachs constantly turning, with back pain, with ankles that ache to just go up 4 steps, like all these physiological pointers can be. I'm not saying this is solid, and I know some people see it black and white like this. I don't, but as a reminder that perhaps something's got to give, that perhaps there's some letting go that has to be done. And connection is the cure. We can't do it alone. We literally, if you just want it from the perspective of, "I don't want to be alone. I don't want to die alone. I don't want to go through sickness alone. I don't want to go through motherhood alone. I don't want to do the things alone," because you shouldn't do motherhood alone. There's so many parts of motherhood that are so awful because you're alone. Because if you were in that space of having other mothers around you to help mother your kids as you are stepping into this new stage of your life, it wouldn't be how so tragic it can be for so many people. I just want to emphasize that, like, connection is the cure. We must get in contact with each other. We must get to know each other. And in the book, I speak in really deep detail about how to create these pods of connection in our lives. And then if you want the big goal, right, which some of us do, of enlightenment, liberation, remember that even the Buddha's enlightenment was relational. 2 things that we can point to is during the enlightenment, as it was happening, Mara, the personification of all that's evil, or the personification of all the 3 poisons that you said, earlier, but which I'm just not sure we're going to have time to talk about today. But the personification of ignorance, attachment, and aversion shows up. And Mara's like, "How do you know that you're enlightened?" And the Buddha says, "Mother Earth is my witness," by placing his hand on the floor. And the earth shook in affirmation. So the relationality of the Buddha and Mara, of the Buddha and Mother Earth with Mara, like that trifecta, like this is what enlightenment is. This is what liberation is understanding the relationality that takes place to really pierce the veil and go to this transcendental space where we see Mom as playing a vital role in our liberation, that we can finally say, wow, there is a soul contract here that I played the villain in this person's life for them to become free. It's so hard to hear that. You know, and I never aspire to get people to understand that right away. No, in my trauma-informed care, in all of my humanitarian efforts, from homelessness to anti-slavery to rehab to orphans, like never, ever go to that place. But the hope is that you create such deep presence, that you are so sunk into your body that when someone is in your presence, there's an environment of warmth. The stories fade, feelings pass, and they have revelation, you know? So I want to just emphasize that point.
I love that. I remember a long time ago, so much of my self-development was like for these very tangible goals. Like, I think one of the first books I read in my earlier 20s was like, it was like, Why Men Love Bitches or something like that. And it was like how to attract people. I was reading books on like charisma, and it was some of those that really, it kind of guided me into the deeper level things. But I just remember a point in my life feeling like I didn't have good friends, and it was needing a ride to the airport once and people just recommending like taking a taxi. This was before Uber was a big thing and whatnot. And so, and at the time I couldn't really afford it. So, and I didn't want to say that. And it was a whole thing, but it was another one of those threads of loneliness that pulled from my past. And so I started reading books on like how to get best friends rather than how to be a best friend. And a lot of it was, I had this fear of saying, well, if I give so much, like, what if it's not returned? Like, will this hurt me even more? Because then I'm actually being that friend and it's not being returned. And I think it's taken me a decade into that growth, or more now, 2 decades, to see that it doesn't matter necessarily exactly how the person shows up, although that almost magically does transform. But you get to a place of, when you're giving, feeling it, you receive it right back in that moment. And it doesn't matter if the person ever turns around and pays you back, or also drives you to the airport, or also loans you something. It's the feeling of love that's exchanged in that moment that you're receiving as well. It's not just giving it forward. And so thank you so much there's so much in this book that we didn't even get to cover. One of my favorite conversations this year. So thank you for that also. And I love leaving listeners with one thought experiment or actually thing to do to ground all this into the reality and start feeling some of the change from the get-go. So if you were going to leave people with one thing, what would that be?
This is such a hard thing. One thing, I think, look, here's what comes up is, next time you feel lonely, do something about it. Literally do something about it. You know, like reach out to a friend and say the vulnerable thing. I need a friend. I need connection, you know, and be open to be rejected, be open to not hear anything back, be open to whatever, but know that you are setting in motion a chain of events that the eyes in your face cannot even imagine, you know, because what you're doing is something that benefits you in that moment, but it benefits everybody that you are creating that thread of connection with, because it's so your loneliness. The reason why I wrote a book is not because it's a niche topic, it's because it's an epidemic. You know, it's literally everywhere. And the only other thing I want to offer too, because they kind of go hand in hand, it's learn to feel your feelings without the stories that come with it, and see how your life changes, you know.
Well, for listeners that are resonating as much as I am, want to read your book and connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Social media. We talked about get off social media, but unfortunately it's the place to go, you know. Go to social media, Instagram, TikTok, Sa DeSimone, SAHDSIMONE, or go to my website, sadesimone.com, and you can find all the information there. Yeah, the book's called Spiritually We, should be available everywhere books are sold. And thank you for having me.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/374. Your challenge for this week is to make a conscious effort to reach out to someone. Be vulnerable. Risk rejection. This is actually really fun if you put your mind to it. This reminds me of a connection challenge that I've held in the past. where I challenge people to connect for different reasons. So every day there's a new reason to connect with someone from your past, from your present. And in doing this challenge, people realize how much support they actually have. Because I get it, when you're sitting there looking for a ride to the airport or wondering what to do last minute on a Wednesday night, it feels like there's no one around. But when you really think about, what do I want to feel right now? Who can I reach out to for this? What if I reached out to a friend from 10 years ago and just told them they were on my mind and reminded them of a memory? What if I reached out to someone who's an acquaintance and gave a little gratitude, shared something that was meaningful to me, shared something about their personality that I feel like stands out? And yeah, this all might sound cheesy if I'm listing them like this, but when you actually get your mind to it and think about how you would say something like this and do something that you're not used to doing before, that alone feels good, whether you get a response or not. But guess what? Most of the time, you're gonna get a response. And when you do, you start to realize, I've had people this whole time and I'm just not acknowledging it. It's like the physical friendship version of gratitude practice. So try it out. Oh, and if you're wondering about that connection challenge, I have something extra special that I'm working on for the new year. It's always been my goal of Mind Love to reach more people, to make more accessible ways to create your best life. And so that is what I've been working on behind the scenes for the last month. If you're not on my email list, get on the email list because I'm dripping out little teasers until the time comes. But I am so excited about this. This has been something that has been on my mind plate since I literally launched Mind Love, and it's finally coming. So don't forget to sign up for the email list. You can text the word morning to 33777 or just go to the homepage of mindlove.com. You can find all of my amazing sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.